Welcome to the Ken Hill podcast. Once again, I appreciate you taking the time to tune in. And for the people that have donated, thank you very much. And this podcast is actually sort of a update of a podcast that I did a few years ago. And that was podcast number 32, which is what I do on race weekends with race teams, right? So the actual things that I'm doing, and we kind of dove into the depths of that one. And this podcast is a little bit different, and it's different because I just got done working with the Rick race team, and I basically been to every Moto America round for 4 years, and I wanted to put together a podcast that really kind of summed up what I learned working with race teams. Because one of the questions that I would typically get asked is, here you are, you're at the Moto America deal, or you're at the going to Europe and working with these race teams, and so what's the secret? What are they doing better, and how does that going to shortcut my riding? I want the secrets. And this podcast, I wanted to put together and fill you in on that and sort of tell you exactly what's going on. So I have to tell you, fundamentally, I didn't learn anything new. And I wanted to. I really did. I wanted to learn something new. And trust me, I looked. Because everybody thinks, you're gonna learn these special things. And I learned some things, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the bottom line is fundamentals rule. You're always trying to get back to fundamentals. And you'll hear me mention this a few times in this podcast, but it's executing perfect fundamentals under pressure. That's what it's about. It's about bringing those fundamentals out when there's a gun to your head, right? When everything's on the line, when money and points are on the line, it's bringing those fundamentals out. And fundamentally, I didn't learn anything new. What ended up happening is I kept coming back and referring to the fundamentals that, of course, we've already established, and trying to bring those out at the right time for that rider on that day. So the big takeaway with that is double down on your fundamentals, because that is what you're trying to bring out during whether it's your street ride, whether it's your track day, or whether it's your race. That is what we're trying to bring out. And I'm gonna say it again. Fundamentals rule. All right. So what did I learn? I learned some interesting things. And what I learned is I learned processes, right? I learned that having the right processes is what gets the progress going. So we'll talk a little bit about processes. And then the other one that I learned about is I learned a lot about people and how those people react under pressure as well, and how we get people to react the right way under pressure. So processes rule. And there's so many different processes that we could talk about, but I'll definitely talk about some of the ones that I think will help you the most. And the first one is we started our days off every single day with what's holding you back, right? Every team member talking about what's holding you back today. We found some amazing things that happened during these very, very short meetings, whether it was somebody has a birthday that day and they need to take a phone call because they're away, or whatever it is, right? Other people would jump in and cover for that person. Or maybe somebody's not feeling well that day, or whatever it may be. So what we found is that what's holding you back is just as much personal as it is on the sports side of it as well. So thinking about, what's holding me back personally as well as what's holding me back professionally with what's going on the team. Because somebody would talk about, I've got a call with my daughter today because it's her birthday. And then we'd have somebody else say, okay, great, I'll jump in and cover you for whatever it is. Just as much as somebody would say, hey, we're out of clutch packs, or we're down to our last clutch pack and we need 2 clutch packs for tomorrow. So putting yourself in a position to understand what's holding you back early so you can be proactive and not reactive it was certainly a huge deal. A few other things on processes. Having a process that were consistent. So understanding that, for instance, our data downloads. Our data downloads actually they ended up having a process that ended up sort of taking on a life of its own, which would be, for instance, rider would come off the track, session would be over, whether it was a positive or negative session. The rider typically would talk to the crew chief for a minute or two. They'd take some notes, and we were getting the gut emotional part of what the rider was feeling. The emotional part. Oh, the bike sucks, or oh my God, the fork is great. Now the shock is horrible. Whatever it is, we were getting some of the gut reactions from the rider. From there, the data analyst would go back. We'd download the data, and then the data analyst, myself, and the crew chief would sit down and look over the data. Then we would bring the rider in, and then we'd go through we had a pretty comprehensive download sheet about the bike, and then we had a download sheet on the rider. We would reconcile those together and come up with a plan for the next session. There ended up being a pretty comprehensive process to that, and again, learning how that worked and going through that consistently was really the key. We never skipped a download. It didn't matter if we were P1 in that session, we never skipped a download. It didn't matter if we won the race, we did not skip that because we needed to make sure that we had the consistency doing this. So processes there were huge. Some other processes that'll help you, maybe not at that level, is listen to one voice. So this gets super, I'll give you an example of this. We had a rider come up to me and go, hey man, guy was watching me and he said that I keep running wide or I'm the wrong line in turn 2. Okay, well, first of all, who is this guy? What is his expertise in riding dynamics? How does he know you? And how do we know if that information is even correct? So not everyone deserves an opinion. Once we vet out, this is just some dude who's watching you and doesn't understand any of these things, doesn't merit an opinion. So yeah, get that out of your mind and focus on the people that do have expertise, whose opinions do matter. It allows you to focus on what does matter from the right voices instead of listening to some things that don't really matter. And not only listening to one voice in general, listening to one voice from your tire source, right? So listen to your one source from the tire guy. Listen to your one source on your suspension person. Listen to your one source on your rider coach. Just because rider X is using a 9.5 spring doesn't mean you should be using a 9.5 spring, because we don't know where you're at with your bike setup, with your preload or your valving or your ride height. So just because somebody else is doing something does not mean it's right for you. So other processes that we looked at is, if you have the ability, walk the track. Walk the track with your track map, and make sure you're walking the track with people that are either on your team or in your court that are working with you. This was a great way that we developed, being able to walk the track, say, with our data person, and it really shortcutted what we were looking for when we'd go over data. So make sure you're taking a look at that. The overall thing with processes is, think about what you're doing, not so much what other people are doing, and build your processes around that. So the last thing is people. How people react under pressure. And I'm just as guilty as everyone on that. It's pretty easy to get emotional under pressure instead of falling back to the technical side. And what this really boiled down to is how you react under pressure loops right back to your training and preparation and how you collaborate with everybody else on your team. We want to be in that mindset to be proactive and not reactive. You can be reactive, but remember, reactive is built off of your training as well, right? That you're going to react to the highest level of your training and preparation. So I want to put this podcast together because a lot of times the notion is that there is some sort of silver bullet or secrets of what these riders and teams are doing. And the bottom line is they're not. They're not. What they're doing is they're doubling down on the fundamentals. They're doubling down on processes, and they're getting people to react without emotion so they can do the jobs under pressure. So there you are. What I learned working with race teams, and I tell you, this is something that I'm really taking forward with me, and it's something that I'm going to continue to keep working on and developing on my end. Copyright 2019, Kent Hill Coaching. All